Hey friends, welcome back to the Strength for Generations podcast. I am your host, Krista Baker, and today we have a very special guest joining us. This is one of those conversations that I truly believe can help your marriage. And I don't say that lightly. But a year ago, Mike and I were in a place where we just had this little bit of a roadblock that we couldn't figure out on our own. We obviously love each other very deeply. We're very committed to our faith and our family. But this one thing we just couldn't really communicate well or properly about. And as a woman and working with women, I often hear a lot of us say, oh, I wish my husband would just go and get help for this thing, or point out what we think needs fixing. But I realized I couldn't keep pointing fingers at Mike's shortcomings when I had my own stuff I wasn't communicating well either. So I knew that we needed some support, but not just any support. We reached out to Pastor Jason, which he's our guest today. I didn't know him as well as I do now, but I did know that he was the person at our church that could help this type of a conversation that we were in need of. I believe that Mike needed to hear from another man. Pastor Jason is so open and honest about his own struggles and how he communicates in his marriage. I think it's so important for our husbands to hear from other men instead of just having, two women in the room. I knew that that's not what we needed in that moment. And to be honest, I do personally, I do better with male authority, even though I'm very I'm trying to be a little softer, but I do find I'm a little bit more masculine at times. And I just wanted to have that male perspective, kind of like that brotherhood for Mike, that Me Too moment. So we reached out to Pastor Jason from our church. We go to New Hope Church in St. Catharines. And friends, what he shared with us changed everything. He broke down what it actually means when scripture says, the two shall become one flesh. Not just the romantic idea of it, but the practical day-to-day reality of living as one. He showed us 5 specific areas where every Christian marriage either thrives or struggles. And here's what hit me the hardest. You can mess with just one of these 5 areas and it starts affecting all the others. It's like a web. When one area breaks down, everything else starts to crumble too. And for Mike and me, it turned out to be the conversations we had around our finances. We weren't hiding anything from each other, but the way that we had set things up was creating this constant undercurrent of tension. Like little blame moments where you should have known conversations kept coming up. And because I'm self-employed and my income changes month to month, and his is stable, it was creating this dynamic that we just didn't communicate well through. And to be honest, I had my own rooted issues when it came to that. Remember, guys, I've talked to you guys about it before. I have that survivor mentality. So I've always just gone and done anything I needed to do to just make it work. And that wasn't working well for us and our communication. And it wasn't what was honestly biblical. It wasn't what God wanted for us. So when we finally addressed that one area, and Pastor Jason's going to share about the framework in this episode, it really removed the roadblock completely. And it feels so much better to have that wall come down. We could finally talk about it openly and honestly instead of for me, I would just get my guard up and literally feel my traps and my shoulders get really tense and my shoulders come up. So I truly believe that was a breakthrough that made everything else that was already good even better. Because Mike and I have really dialed in so many areas of our lives that we're, why we needed to tackle that next step. So it's kind of like removing that one splinter allowed us to actually heal. This is exactly what he's going to walk us through today, my friends. So he's going to share the 5 specific areas where Christian marriages either become truly one flesh or stay stuck in surface level connection. He gives us practical tools and he'll help you identify which area might be the key to unlocking everything else in your relationship. Now, before we dive in, I want to make sure you don't miss something really important. The 5-day Move Mountains training method is coming soon, my friends. I know I've been talking about it a lot. It's just a lot of behind the scenes stuff that has had to happen to make this all work, effectively and efficiently. But in that free 5-day training, we cover a lot of what Pastor Jason speaks to us about in this training. So we really dive into the physical health, nutritional foundations, spiritual strength, generational impact, and the mindset that ties it all together. And after today's conversation, you'll understand why I'm including a whole section on generational health, because the way we show up in our marriages directly impacts the legacy we're leaving for our children. So don't forget to get on that list right now. Just go over to bakerfamilyfitness.com/move mountains and make sure you get signed up. This training is very powerful and completely free. Here's the thing, the way we care for our bodies and the way we care for our marriages are more connected than most people realize. When we're physically strong, we show up better emotionally. And when we're unified spiritually, we make better health decisions together. It's all connected, and that's exactly what we dive into in the Move Mountains method. This conversation with Pastor Jason, it's not just informative, it's transformational. God used this framework to save this next piece of my marriage. I don't think that my marriage was anywhere near it was like 10 years ago before I knew Jesus, but it was something that just really allowed us to connect and get deeper. And I believe God wants that for you too. I believe that He wants to use this to strengthen yours. This is one of those episodes that you're going to want to share. I want you to share it with your spouse. Not like, hey, you need to hear this. Like, hey, why don't we listen to this together? Share it with your married friends. Share it with the couple that you've been praying for. Because here's what I know. We don't have to wait for our marriages to get worse before we take action. We can start building strength today. We can start becoming truly one flesh today. And that decision doesn't just impact us, it impacts our children, our children's children, and the generations that come after us. So my prayer for you is as you listen to this conversation is that God would speak directly to your heart, that He would show you which one of these 5 areas needs your attention first, and that you would have the courage to take that first step toward the marriage He designed for you to have. The marriage that honors Him and creates a legacy of strength for generations. All right, my friends, let's dive into this life-changing conversation with Pastor Jason about the 5 steps to becoming one flesh. Welcome to Strength for Generations, the go-to podcast for Christian families who want to build strength, restore energy, and deepen connection with God at the center. I'm Krista Baker, Christian health coach, wife, mom, and co-founder of Baker Family Fitness. I'm here to help you honor God with your health and bring peace back to the process, to simplify what it means to build strength in your body, renew your mind, and care for your spirit, all without losing precious time with your family. So grab your coffee and your ribeye, and let's do this His way. All right, my friends, I have a really special guest here with me today. Pastor Jason, he's a pastor at New Hope Church where I attend. He has been in ministry for over 12 years and he studied theology at Regent College. He's a husband and dad of 3 very beautiful children. His wife is pretty awesome too. And he's deeply passionate about helping people experience God in a real and authentic way. There's a reason why I invited him here today. Mike and I actually had a really powerful conversation with him around marriage. And I wanted to have him here to really have him explain what he explained to us because it gave us a lot of aha moments. So I am super excited for you guys to hear this today. But before we get into all of that, I really want to start here first. So I got a question for you. Ready? Okay. Sit down with anyone, dead or alive. Who would it be and why?
Anyone dead or alive, I would say if you take away obviously Jesus,
Mhm.
and a whole bunch of biblical characters like the Apostle Paul and all the people that we see in the Bible. If you take all those away, because I would easily pick someone from there. I think I might say someone like, I don't know if your audience will know this person, but his name's Dietrich Bonhoeffer. There was recently a movie about him, about parts of his life. But it would be Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He was a famous pastor, famous scholar, was alive during World War II. He was a German who was kind of like a spy at the same time. He was trying to be a voice in the midst of some pretty atrocious things happening in Germany at the time. But I really appreciate his theological works, his scholarship, but also his bravery. There was a point in where he was outside of Germany during World War II and in the States. And he felt compelled to go back because his people, his family, his friends, the German people were going through some pretty intense times, and he didn't want to be somewhere safe where they were all suffering. So he went back. He went back and became an advocate and worked really hard to speak truth, to and to teach and to try to protect people. But yeah, he eventually died in a prison camp.
Okay, wow. I think I have some learning to do here now. I had a feeling we're gonna experience some.
You
All
go
right.
read Eric Metaxas. He has a biography on him. Pretty
Yeah.
good.
So good. Okay, good to know. A little different than, when my husband's like will tell us a golf player or you know, we all have that person. My person is a Proverbs 31 woman, so it's hard not to pick someone from the Bible, you know?
Yes.
Okay, so Mike and I came to you when we were struggling a little bit, right? We knew that something felt off, and you helped us really break down these 5 areas. And to be honest, like I know they were so aha moment at the time. This is over a year ago that we came and sat with you, and I knew that we were like really connected in some of the areas, but we definitely were struggling in other ones, and it really allowed us to get a little bit deeper in our marriage and our relationship. So I'd really love for you to share what you shared with us and just kind of give us a little walkthrough of even how like this all came to be. Yeah, I'll let you riff.
Yeah, I would love to. I think maybe one of the first things I said to you, and I say this to, I do a lot of pre-engagement, premarital counseling. And often the first conversation I try to have with people is when they think of marriage, and I'm always coming from a biblical perspective because I'm a pastor. And I think that's where we get our examples, our vision for what something should look like. And so we're talking about marriage. We're talking about marriage. So, one of the Proverbs says, without a vision, the people perish. If you don't have a vision for the thing you're trying to work towards, you're really just swinging in the dark. And so, I often ask the question, okay, so what is marriage? Like, what is marriage from a biblical perspective? If you had to like narrow it down to just one or two words, say, what is the vision? What is the biblical perspective on marriage? That's what I ask. And the people give all kinds of answers. My answer is straight from Genesis, which is the two shall become one flesh. Marriage is about being one flesh. And it's about maintaining and sustaining the quality of being one. Now, I like to give a whole bunch of examples. It's like the truest truth about marriage, whether you like it or not, especially when you get married within the church under God's blessing. The scriptures say that God makes you one flesh. So now you're no longer just an individual. Now you are one flesh with another person. And so that's part of the truest truth about you, other than I'm a child of God. Now you are one flesh. And so you have two choices. You can either live into the grain of that, you can either live into the truth of that, or you could live against the grain of that. And we know what happens when we live against the grain. We get splinters. Like it hurts, it's painful. And so the goal of any marriage is to maintain and sustain the quality of being one. Now, that sounds really nice, a little bit philosophical, a little bit big picture. So the question always is, well, what on earth does that look like? What does it look like to maintain and sustain the quality of being one? And so because I come from biblical training, and I think that the scriptures gives us a holistic picture of what it looks like to be human. We're not just brains, we're not just emotions, we're not just bodies. And so I feel like the scripture gives us a very holistic idea of what a human person is. And so I'll break it down into 5 different categories of what it could look like to maintain and sustain the quality of being one flesh. Well, we all have physical bodies, and we don't just have bodies, we are bodies. That'll be very attractive for your audience who truly believe that your physical body and taking care of it matter. Well, yes, you are a physical body. And so you have a physical body. I'll give you all 5 and then I'll break them down one at a time. So we have a physical relationship between husband and wife. We have an emotional and a psychological relationship. We're minds, we're emotions, and that needs to be one as well. We have we're spiritual beings. We have spiritual lives. And so our spiritual lives need to be united and in going in the same direction and one. And I like to put that in the middle as number 3, because God's the one who invented marriage. God's the one who invented relationship. God's the one who invented or created love. And so or marriage. And so if you don't, like, that may be the most vital one in all of these. If you're not spiritually united, you're in big trouble. Then, of course, we're social creatures. So we need to be socially united and thinking about our social lives in the same way. And then lastly, I don't have a great word for this one. I normally just call it legal. And what I mean by that is, well, two things. One, that everything we own is united. Our money, our possessions, everything. So there's not his bank account, her bank account. There's not his possessions, her possessions, just our things. And that also then, that's one. And then the legal also, so we're also legally, like, according to the laws of the land that we live in, we are legally married. We're one. So let me just break down a little bit even further, because what does it mean to be physically one? Well, every marriage is supposed to have a physical relationship. And that, of course, means a sexual relationship. And so, how are we doing with maintaining our sexual relationship? And it's not just that. Like, if you're in a marriage where you're never in the same room, like husband or wife is traveling all the time, when you're not physically in the same space, it's really hard to feel united. And so there's a physical aspect to ourselves. We are physically one flesh. And so when we're neglecting that aspect of our marriage, you start to feel the effects of that. You start to feel distant. Men especially, normally, this is more important for men. So for instance, men, when they're not feeling physically united with their wife, they're much less likely, or it's harder for them to be emotionally and psychologically united with their wife. Now, women are often the opposite. If you're not connecting with me as a woman, like you or me, or the wife as a woman on an emotional and psychological level, it's much harder for a woman to then offer her body to her husband, because she doesn't feel loved or she doesn't feel connected with. She just feels like a body that's being used. And so there's a physical relationship that we have to constantly maintain and sustain because we are one flesh. Then there's the emotional and psychological. And as I kind of said already, or alluded to, this is often harder for men. It's hard for us as men to talk about what's really going on in our emotions, how we're feeling. Often, I joke and say, my wife asks me how I'm feeling and I tell her what I think. Because we don't know, we suck at talking about our feelings. We're like mad, angry, or sad, and we have no other emotions. And we don't know how to talk about feeling insignificant or feeling loss, a feeling of an inner loss, or feeling grief. Like, men just have a really hard time talking about that. But if you're not, here's the thing, if you're not sharing with your wife what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your heart, then there's pieces of you that you are neglecting to give back, to give to her. You're refusing to maintain and sustain one flesh in a psychological and an emotional way, right? And so sometimes I'll tell people, like, when you have habits for eating right, you have habits for going to the gym to have a strong body, you have habits for making sure you go to work and get there on time. What are your habits? What are your routines for making sure you and your spouse are united in emotion and thought? Are you sharing what's really on your mind? Often men are terrified to share what's on their mind because then you get an emotional response that you weren't expecting. Or opposite, the woman shares what's on her heart and the men don't know how to respond to that. So we have to maintain and sustain an emotional and psychological relationship, which means habits behind that. Then, of course, we need to have our spiritual relationship, our relationship with God, united and on the same page. So do we believe the same things about God? Do we have practices that draw us closer together as a couple? Because I might have, as a spouse, I might have a great relationship with God. And my wife might have a personal relationship that's great, but do we have a relationship with God together? Because I'm not just an individual anymore. I am one flesh with another person. And so we have to have our spiritual lives united. Sometimes we see men and women, they'll go to separate life groups or they'll go to church at different times. And there's nothing about their faith, there's nothing about their relationship with God that is cohesive and united. And that's pretty hard to make some big decisions in life when your relationship with God is off kilter, or you're not united, or you never pray together, or you never talk about God together, or you never study the scriptures or read the scriptures together. Like, so the spiritual aspect of the self is massive. It's the glue. We're promising to love one another till death do us part unconditionally, which is almost basically an impossible task. And so to try to do that without being united to God and having the Holy Spirit empower you and strengthen you and having the scriptures keep you wise and convict you, because sometimes, we joked before we came on air, we should never tell our spouse what to do. Well, it's a little easier if both of us together are seeking God and seeking the scriptures, and then God is able then to convict me, for instance, and say, you're not spending enough quality time with your wife. And I sit back and go, shoot, yeah, she's been saying that to me for many, many months, but I haven't been listening because of my pride, or I'm not getting the respect I deserve. And so we end up neglecting certain things. So the spiritual relationship, are you going in the same direction as a husband and wife, being united in your approach to your spiritual life? That's very, very important. And then there's the relational aspect. So you got your physical, you got your emotional and your psychological, you got your spiritual relationship. And then we are relational creatures. And so often what I say here is, our relational worlds need to be on the same page. Our parenting strategies, same page. How we interact with and spend time with in-laws need to be on the same page. Our faith community or our friendships, like no secret friendships. You should have no friendships in your life that your spouse don't know about and don't fully approve of. I've seen so many times where there's been major fights in relationships because one of the spouses doesn't like some of the friends and they keep spending time with the friends, and friends are a bad influence. And that because of that, it then has a negative impact on the relationship. So we have to be on the same page socially. And we have to not be alone. Marriage is not supposed to be done on an island. Marriage is supposed to be done in community with other people and people who believe in the relationship. People who, when you go out to the pub or to the gym and you're venting about your spouse, someone who will look you in the eye and say, yeah, sounds difficult, sounds tough. Now go home and reconcile with your spouse. Instead of saying, yeah, they're horrible. Yeah, you should leave them. Or yeah, they're terrible. You're right. And it's just like, it's unhelpful. So we need friendships. We need a social community that are for us and our marriage and who push us back to each other, not farther away. And so there's lots more that could be said in the social sphere, but being on the same page, right? Like a hard thing often for new couples is in-laws get in between each other. So you take mother and other son, let's say, a lot of time the son and the mother have a really close relationship. The son and the mother end up ganging up on the wife. And so what starts happening is your relationship to your mom starts becoming a wedge between you and your spouse. And you just have to, that has to be talked about. Like we have to be on the same page. Your parents' opinion is not higher than your spouse's opinion. And so you have to be united. You have to be united in your approach to in-laws, and you have to not take sides, because it ends up being a wedge in the relationship. So there's relationships, and we could talk a lot about that. But let me get to the last one. So then you have your legal, and that means finances, that means possessions. Sometimes if you're in a joint marriage, kids that are coming in, a blended marriage, kids that are coming in from two different families, like you got to be on the same page. Like, a big issue often, the three biggest reasons for divorce: money, sex, and in-laws. So if your money and your possessions are not united, every ownership is one, not mine, not yours, not your bank account, my bank account, but all one. It's super important, because if it's not, then there's a room for mistrust. There's room for a lack of clarity. And how can you question each other or be accountable or transparent about finances and bills and money that you're spending on things? So it's just so important, because anything and everything could become a wedge in a relationship, because marriage is super hard. It's super hard. You're trying to love someone unconditionally in all of their faults, in all of their idiosyncratic ways. It's super hard. And plus, you have desires. I want to be loved. I want to be respected. It's super, super hard. So to have things that are separate, my house, my vacation home, your vacation home, my credit card, your credit card, just creates all kinds of room for mistrust and hiding things. And so everything should be united, all on the same page. And then what I normally will say to couples right away is I'll give them the list of 5 things and say, which one of these things or which few of these things would you say you're on the same page, you're united, you're just doing really good in it, and which ones are you lacking in? And almost 80% of the time, the two main ones the big ones I see issues on are the emotional, psychological, because it's hard for men, and the spiritual often because they're nervous about it, they're afraid. And then those are the 2 big ones I normally see issues. And then every once in a while, there's a physical issue or there's a legal issue. They just never join their finances for whatever reason. There's some trauma there. They're afraid. But those are the 5 things: physical, emotional and psychological, spiritual, relational, and legal.
When we came, I'm going to be a little vulnerable. And I want to share with you what happened since we had that conversation. When we came to you, I was like, there's something missing. And that's why when you shared those 5 things, it gave me that, okay, we're really good here, really good here, really good here, really. But it was our financial stuff. And it wasn't that we were hiding anything from each other. It was just the way we set our paperwork up at first. But I do think that it had a little bit of rooted stuff in there. And we weren't hiding anything from each other, but it was just causing like, you should have known, and blame and all of these other things. And especially being self-employed, like my income changes based off of the success of the month. Right. But for him, it was very stable. And so like, that was the thing that we really needed to work out. And so since we had that conversation and then we went through the whole One initiative with the church, it really got us to a good place where we are like, it's really, really aligned now. And when you do that, all the other areas that were already really good are even better. You're like not fighting as much. You're just, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like that one thing that was just kind of like that little nag in the back of your ear. And you're just, okay, well, this helped me get to that place. So I was going to ask, like, where do you feel like there's a lot of people, or what do you think people are missing the most? But I think sometimes what I'm assuming is we see our own baggage be brought into this one flesh, right? Because a lot of what you shared, I just remember I'm like, oh yeah, that was the beginning of my marriage. I remember those things, but then you work through it, right? And so why do you think that is? Why do you think people are having these specific struggles?
Yep, I think you nailed one part of it, that people come in with baggage and fear. So, you talk about the finances. It's not just that everything is equal, but also that we're on the same page in where we're spending and where we're saving and what we're investing in and what we're not investing in. So honestly, sometimes it's just a lack of habits. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have a habit where you are, every couple months or whatnot, you're coming down, you're revisiting the budget. You're revisiting where your money's going and we're together and agreeing, yep, no, we're comfortable with that. Yep, no, we're comfortable with that. So often it's habits, with the relationship stuff, like what other couples are speaking into our life? Where's our social community that is invested in us and we're invested in them? And those take habits. That's just like, oh, it happens when it happens. It's like, no, you have to have intentional habits. You go to the gym. Going to the gym is an intentional habit that you put in your calendar and that you see every day. So what are your intentional habits for your physical relationship? What are your intentional habits for your emotional and psychological relationship together? What are your habits for your spiritual? Like, okay, yeah, you go to church on Sunday, but are you ever talking about God together? Are you ever processing big decisions with Christ at the center? Are you investing in your spiritual relationship together in certain ways? And if so, like, what are the habits? So we're habitual creatures. People who go to the gym and work on their physical fitness know this best. So what are your habits and rhythms for all 5 of these different areas? And because here's the thing, I didn't share this yet. You mess with one of those things out of the 5, you mess with one and it starts to affect the other ones. So you stop connecting emotionally and psychologically with your spouse, you're going to soon lose the physical relationship. And as you stop being transparent with your finances and on the same page, well, then you're going to slowly be not wanting to talk emotionally and psychologically about things because you don't feel like you're on the same page. So like every single one of this, it's not a hierarchy. It's like a web. You mess with one and they all start to slowly crumble.
Yeah, I see that. It's very similar to like the health journey. Oh, like this is healthy relationship journey, healthy, like just healthy, right? Bring it to the Lord. Always bring it to the Lord is what, what we've been
Yes.
working on. And it's been, one step in front of the other. And I know people are tired. They're busy. They're just being pulled in all these different directions. And I remember like something that we work on is like this marriage meeting. And remember you had shared that with us. So do you want to share a little bit about what that might look like? Having like a planned time where you actually go over these things.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So there's lots of different things you can do. For instance, you should have a date night every week. You should
Right.
have a date night every single week with your spouse. One of the things I do is I have in my calendar a repeated calendar thing on every Friday for brunch. And in that calendar appointment, I have probably 25 questions that are just like loving, probing questions for my wife. And some of them that I might be uncomfortable to hear the answer. So, for instance, how have I misunderstood you this last week?
Mm.
Or how have I loved you well this week? And how could I love you better? What's something you're really looking forward to? What's something you're not looking forward to? So in that's just a habit I've created, right? So in my calendar, I know I'm having brunch with Phoebe every Friday, and I'm going to pull up one or two or three of those questions to take our conversation to a more deeper emotional and psychological depth. So that's one simple thing, like put some questions in your calendar that's going to help you have a conversation. And actually that was huge for me because I don't know about other guys, but there'd be oftentimes where I'm sitting down with a meal for my wife, kids are not there. So here we are on date night or date brunch. And I sit down and I'm like, okay, I don't know what to talk about
Mm.
other than talk about the kid, talk about work. But it's like, that's not investing in the relationship. And so I'm like, I need to be prepared for this. So I made a long list of questions that help me know my wife better, help me know what's really going on here, share with her what's really going on in my heart and mind, because she always asks me all the time, how are you doing? And I was just good.
Yeah.
I'm good. It's like I'm not offering her anything that's really going on in my mind and heart. So a list of questions for date day and put it in the calendar, right? Like every week you're having a date day. But then sometimes what I'll encourage couples to do who have a really hard time, like sitting down, having a conversation, is outside of like over and above a date night. It's like choose a night of the week where the kids are down or where you have access to each other. You're not exhausted because you need energy to have good quality conversation. Choose a day of the week where you feel like we can have a debriefing time, where we can just debrief the things that happened this week and how they affected my emotion, my mind, how they affected our relationship. We need to be able to talk about hard things. But if you're exhausted, you're not going to use the language, you're not going to exert the energy to have a hard conversation with your spouse and say, hey, when you were short with me at breakfast with the kids the other day, it hurt my feelings. I felt disrespected. You need to be able to say that to your spouse without them losing their mind and going, "Wah," and defending themselves. And so those times, this is actually a crucial point right here. Those times where you are debriefing, talking about your week, maybe the things that hurt you or you felt misunderstood, you have to cultivate a curious posture, a curious mentality, not a judgmental. It's really easy to be like, wow, and defend yourself and do all kinds of things that aren't productive for the conversation. And so you got to put on a curiosity mindset.
Mm.
I even sometimes will give couples a tool because we really suck at this.
Yeah.
We always interrupt each other. We're always defending. We're always giving excuses. And so I give them a little tool, like some form of a physical object. Whoever has, sometimes it's a phone or me and my wife jokingly, when we had to have a hard conversation, we used a My Little Pony. Something that brought a little lightness to a hard conversation. So whoever has that physical object, they're the ones who get to talk.
It's like the talking stick.
And those who don't have the talking stick are listening. They're not allowed to interrupt. They're not allowed to correct, and they're not allowed to defend. And when the person has done their initial communication, and it shouldn't be 35 minutes, 5-10 minutes, they give the talking stick to the person. And now what's that person to do? Not respond, actually. Repeat back what they heard.
Mm.
Only repeat back what they heard. And then you give the talking stick back to the person who originally shared. And here's what that does. And they get another opportunity. The person who gets this talking stick back, they get an opportunity to say, yes, that's exactly what I said. Thank you for hearing me. Or sometimes what often happens is, yep, you got that point and that point, but you missed this one. So let me repeat that again. Here's what that does, because you need listening skills. It's very hard to listen to each other without interrupting and defending. That now, not only have you listened to the other person, now they feel listened to. Knowing you're listened to and feeling you're listened to are two different things. So once you feel listened to, you feel loved. You feel respected and actually heard. And then you give the talking stick to the other person, and they have an opportunity to respond. And the same rules apply. No interrupting, no. It seems like a really elementary thing, but you watch. If you try to do it, watch how often you interrupt, you defend, and you argue and not listen.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a defender type of person when it comes to this stuff. It's so hard not to get the backup. And that came from being fourth in my home and trying to like have my own voice. And I don't want to bring that into my marriage because I love my husband more than well, obviously I love God the most, but like Mike is my man. Like I am so madly in love with him and I want all of these things to just continually get better. And so I really like that. I like that tangible tool that we can actually walk away with and do. Another thing I think we're going to create maybe as I add this to the course, I'm going to create a list of questions, things that we can have that we can put into our phones as a good reminder. Because I find I get stuck there too. And it's like about work or about, even about church and the kids and their activities and all of my family stuff and his family stuff and things. And I'm like, but like, I just want to like connect with him. And sometimes it just, we need, that little bit of help to talk about other things aside from the Masters this weekend. But yeah, I like that. And I like how you broke this down into like really practical steps. It's very clear direction. And, I know that for anyone that's listening right now, if you were to say like, what is the one place that they should start? Because I'm the type of person, like you said earlier, you're like, well, we have 5 areas, right? I break that down into like the health too. So it's like our nutrition and our movement and our walking and our sunshine and our vitamins and like all these things. I can't give them all of that at once. It's too much. And so what would you say would be the one thing for people to start doing today?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, put those 5 things somewhere. Put them out there on your wall or on the fridge and just start the conversation of where we're at. How satisfied are we? How united do we feel? Take one at a time. And maybe you choose out of those 5 categories, you choose the one that you're most emotional about right now, that you're most upset with, that you're most feeling lacking, or you're most craving. Like maybe for the man, sometimes it's like, I don't feel like we have a robust, rich, consistent physical relationship. So can we at least talk about that without everyone losing their mind and being mad? Can we just talk about it? Can we have a healthy conversation about it? So I'd throw those 5 things out there and go, which one do we feel is lacking the most? Let's talk about that. And then let's create just one habit for one of those areas at a time that we could do that will make us become closer and closer, be more united in that aspect. So if it's the emotional, psychological, it's like, let's say we were really struggling there. It's like, hey, okay, let's have a date night every week for the next 6 weeks. And on that date night, there's a list of 10 questions that we will always choose 2 or 3 to talk about. So that's one thing. Do that for 6 weeks and then revisit the 5 categories. Okay, we're doing better there. Should we add another habit for the physical or for the emotional, psychological? Or should we now address maybe the spiritual? How are we growing? How are we being united in our spiritual relationship? And what's one habit, at least one habit, to cause us to be more united in that aspect? So choose one category and then one habit, one routine, one rhythm that you will do every week.
That's so good. I love that. What's that? Consistency, absolutely, over time, for sure. I'll be honest with you, even just like listening to that, it brings a lot of emotion to me because God saved my marriage. And I know he can do that for someone listening to this right now. I truly believe that when we invite Jesus into the journey, it just gets better. But being honest, being transparent, being vulnerable, and not like, I mean, I tried all the things before where it was like, oh, do this Bible study with me. But if he didn't do it, I'd be mad. And now it's like, hey, if he does one of the days, I'm really happy. And I saw that he showed up for that one day. So praise the good too, instead of always pointing out the bad. And I believe, like, I mean, God saved our marriage. He saved everything that we're doing, and he's just been so fruitful. So I want to scream from the mountaintops, like, no, Jesus, bring him into the marriage. We know how much this matters. I believe in marriage, not abusive marriages, marriages that are biblically sound. You know, our families matter. The way we show up in our home, it shapes the generations moving forward. But we don't need to wait for things to get worse before we take action. We need to just start small. We need to just really start today. Don't delay. Don't keep putting it off. It's important work to do. But yeah, I'm really grateful that you came here today. I've wanted to have this conversation with you since we had it like a year ago. So we did it. Nothing got in the way, and I'm really grateful for that. Where could people like check out, like, so do you want to tell anybody about the church? Maybe any YouTube channels or anything that you want to share, and I can make sure I put it in the show notes if anyone wants to check out what you're doing with church.
Yeah. So our website is newhopechurchniagara.com. We also have a YouTube channel that has all kinds of, our sermons, some of our kids stuff, and then it has a few other resources. So like all of our premarital, marriage, and pre-engagement material. There's an introduction to that on there, what we take people through, because there's a whole course and a whole kind of rhythm that we take every couple through before they get married or when their marriage is falling apart. It's the same process. You'll see on our channel a couple other resources, like something we call our 911 plan. When our lives are in crisis, when our marriage are in crisis, or when we want to prevent crisis, or when a crisis shows up, we don't want the crisis to kill us. We have this really great holistic plan called the 911 plan on our YouTube channel that addresses the whole aspect, very similar to this one flesh thing I just laid out for you. You have your spiritual relationship, your mental health relationship, your physical health, what you're putting in your mind, your relationships. So that's a great plan. That's a resource on there. But yeah, there's lots of stuff on our YouTube channel and on our website.
Oh, yeah, that's so great. And maybe I'll come up with a list of questions for you guys and I'll put it in our resources as well. But Jason, thank you so much for being here. I can't tell you how grateful I am to have you with me today. And my friends who's listening right
My
now,
pleasure.
yeah, let's just keep, getting strong for the generations and keep doing his work. Thanks for tuning in to Strength for Generations. If this podcast encouraged you, it would be a blessing if you took a quick minute to leave a 5-star review. It helps more families hear this message and find hope for their health and faith journey. It lights me up to know this podcast is helping you. And if you feel led to share this episode, text it to a friend, post it to your stories, or send it to someone on your heart. God might use it to encourage someone who really needs it today. And don't forget to eat steaks, lift weights, love Jesus, and keep doing it His way.